Howdy fellow guitar fanatics, welcome back to another episode of Obsessed with Guitars. This week is going to be another sound alike, and I'm really going to try to capture some of my favorite tones off of this album, The Art of Self-Defense by High on Fire. The first two High on Fire albums were produced by Billy Anderson, the guy who produced the Dope Smoker album for Sleep, or Jerusalem, or whatever you want to call it, whatever it was supposed to be at the time. Billy Anderson was a guy who I think did the best job of capturing that early, raw, High on Fire sound. I really prefer his production, even though it's lower fidelity, it's pretty much sonic masochism, to the later High on Fire albums that I felt were a little too clean and polished for what High on Fire is supposed to be. And also, at the time, Matt was still using his Matamp cabinets and amplifiers when he had gotten rid of them on later releases, and I think his pure Soldano sound isn't quite as interesting as his Soldano SP-77 preamp plugged into a Matamp GT120 cranked to within an inch of its life kind of sound that he had. I really like the kind of gritty, spitty, crackly kind of tone that he got. So what his rig was in those early days of High on Fire was he had his Matamp GT120s from his days with Sleep. He had his Gibson Les Paul Standard, a couple other Gibson Les Pauls as well, but the most famous one would be the 1992 Les Paul Standard that has since been stolen and I hope someday gets returned. So the entire chain would have been his Les Paul, most likely with factory stock Gibson 498T pickups in the bridge. Later on, he would get his own signature pickups from Lace with the Dragonaut and the Dirty Heshers. He would plug that into the Soldano purple preamp, the SP-77, most likely the one that was made in Japan. It definitely wasn't the X88, which would have been the 3-channel preamp. This would only have been the 2-channel preamp, and you can see it on the 1999 in-studio radio appearance that they did when they were just starting out. That was before Art of Self-Defense came out in 1999. And interestingly, in that appearance, he was playing a Kramer 650G, and they were tuned to D standard, not C standard. So, weird enough. Also, partway through that, his Matamp blew up, and they had to go to his Laney backup amp. But on the record, it was his Matamp GT120 plugged through the Matamp 412 cabinets. Now, I have really tried to find out as much as I can about settings, setup, but there's not a lot of information about those early High on Fire records. The speakers that he used, for example, in the Matamp cabinets, most likely were G12H-100s. The thing is that Hank III now owns those speaker cabinets, and he has since respeakered them. Those original speakers are long gone from those cabinets. So most likely G12H-100s is what they probably would have come with at the time, and other people who own green amps that were made around the same time have those speakers in them. As for what his settings were, I don't know. He would have had to plug in, or he would have plugged in that SP-77 preamp into the front end of his Matamp. Didn't have to do that, it has that effects loop, but he plugged it into the front end, and it's just what he did. Now, High on Fire are known for playing at ludicrously high volumes. So what I've really tried to do is, in my Line 6 Helix, really try to recreate what they would have been playing. Now, sadly, there is no Matamp patch in the Line 6 Helix, and trust me, I've tried to find one, and of course, as you can see, I no longer own my Wishbone Ash Matamp 100 watt amplifier. So what I have done is really try to approximate the early High on Fire sound purely through the Line 6 Helix. So thankfully, they do have a really good orange OR80 Line 6. Now, thankfully, they do have a really good orange OR80 simulation in the Line 6 Helix. It's called the Mandarin 80. Now, yes, Matamp and Orange, the designs started to really divert in the early 1970s, and the ORs are higher gain than what you would experience with a Matamp of the same time. Matamps being a little bit more clean and hi-fi. But for the various different amplifiers I have at my disposal in the Line 6 Helix, the Mandarin is by far going to be the closest thing to a Matamp that's in here. The topography, the sound, the throatiness, the low end clarity is still really similar to what Matamps would have been at the time. So I feel safer using the Mandarin 80 simulation in here. I'm also using a pair of the cabinets that they would have used at the time. It would have been Fane speakers, which, like the G12H-100s, would be much more suited for loud clarity, good tight bottom end. The G12H-100s are, from what I've read, and this could be apocryphal, actually bass speakers that were just used in guitar amplifiers. Again, I don't know how true that is. Celestion doesn't make the G12H-100s anymore. They now make the G12K-100s and the G12T-100s, but no longer the G12H-100s. And from what I've read on the forums, well, people who like playing clean really seem to love them, and people who don't. But it's what would have been in Matt's cab, so I'm going to try to get the closest thing that I can to those kind of speakers. I've also, in the Line 6 Helix, I've set up a Soldano preamp. The crunch channel, I've really driven that pretty hard. I've tried to reduce the drive on the amplifier, although, again, that would have been playing at really ridiculously high volumes and would have been getting some amount of distortion from the amplifier itself. But I really want to get more of the sound of that Soldano, which he had on that album, the first two albums, which were produced by Billy Anderson, Art of Self-Defense and Surrounded by Thieves. He had that weird, crackly Matamp being pushed to its limits, along with that preamp squish that you expect out of a Soldano SLO 100. Of course, he later went on to just playing Soldano SLO 100s. A lot of intermediate amps. He used a Kerry King signature JCM 100. He's used Black Stars off and on, and with Sleep, he's using Orange Dual Darks. So a lot of different amplifiers, but I really want to try to capture that early sound. Now, I don't have any guitars equipped with a 498T pickup. The closest that I have in my arsenal is this. This is my good old Epiphone Flying V, my white Flying V. This has the EVH in the bridge position. Now, this is going to be pretty close to what a 498T would be. It's a better pickup, for one. But the 498Ts usually read about 14K, 15K, somewhere around there, which is what this is. Now, the 498T is an Alnico 5 magnet. This is an Alnico 2, but the similarities are enough that I feel I can get a good enough closeness out of this pickup to really approximate the sound. And plus, dialing it in and just sitting listening to a bunch of High on Fire never really hurts either. So let's go ahead and show you what I'm actually looking at here on the Line 6 Helix, so you can approximate this for yourself if you happen to have one of these. Okay, so taking a look here on the Line 6 Helix, you can see that I have the drive pretty high at 8.6. I've scooped the mids out just a little bit because it sounds pretty scooped midsy to me on the record, but I do have the master and the channel volume up a little bit higher because, again, he wanted to put a lot of that signal through and get more gain out of his amplifier. And here on the Orange OR80, the Mandarin 80 simulation, the drive I've kept fairly low at 5.9. I still want to get some of that good crackly brawniness out of the Mandarin. I've also let the mids a little bit lower at 5. You can see that the bass and the treble are higher than that. I also have the channel volume at 10, and I have the master at 10, because again, we're just trying to get massive amounts of volume, just like Matt would have had. On the cabinet, I'm using the Mandarin cabinet, which would be kind of high-watt Fane kind of sound. So loud and clear. And you can see that I'm using a Shure SM-57 microphone sim here. Sadly, they don't have a biodynamic M88 sim in this, which is what the other mic that Billy Anderson used on Dope Smoker and probably would have used on the early High on Fire releases as well. But again, I think that this is going to do a good representation of getting that sound. And I've done a lot of sitting here and trying to dial it in, sitting here listening to High on Fire while playing. So I think I've gotten pretty darn close, but we'll let you be the judge. Let's go ahead and hear some tones. So there you have it. Do you think I got really close to that early High on Fire sound? Did I nail it? Was there something else I could have done other than buying more gear, of course? I really don't have a lot of budget to do that right now, but I think that I really got close on this sound, and I really love that early High on Fire sound, and I want to give you the ammo to be able to get that kind of sound. So if you really want to hear more of these sound-alikes, do let me know. If you think I got close, or if I was way off, let me know as well. Just put in the comments. You know how this whole YouTube thing works. And until next time, please stay obsessed with guitars.